I've made quite a few like modernized electrified versions of traditional Chinese instruments over the years, many of them on this YouTube channel and a couple off the YouTube channel. So I've kind of become this guy that people call about that kind of stuff. And I got a call to make a Zhongruan. I don't really know what it is, but let's find out together because I'm going to make one anyways. Well, an electric version. This is a classic Zhongruan, which means tenor Ruan. It's a member of the Ruan family. There's a bunch of instruments that look like this in different sizes and scales. This is Nini. You may recognize her from Nini Music on YouTube and Instagram, as well as her recent appearances on America's Got Talent. She has a great channel, and what she does is she does a lot of traditional Chinese instruments mixed with sort of modern Western music and sounds. Nini and her crew contacted me about making a custom Zhongruan that's inspired by this ancient battle axe, as well as, of course, the tenor Zhongruan, and that's the original drawing that they gave me to work off of. Using their drawings as inspiration and a bunch of detailed measurements I got off of some actual Zhongruans, I was able to then get into my Vectric software and start designing this product so it would work in the real world. And here you can see the great thing about my Vectric software is I can do 2D and 3D drawings and models and sort of show all the components and parts individually how I plan to put them. The big idea I had that really busted this concept open was to make the semi-hollow body separate from the blades and to have the blades sort of bolt onto the front of the instrument. So this would give us the option to actually change the look of the instrument, and also as Nini does travel the world playing music, she might want to opt for not bringing actual metal blades with her to some events, like when she's flying on the plane and whatnot, so she could use plastic versions as well, which we'll get into. We wanted to keep this as light as possible, so as we attach these metal blades to it, it won't get too heavy and unwieldy for Nini to play. So that's why we used the poplar to make the body and neck a nice lightweight wood that is strong enough to do the job. I had some pieces of poplar left over that I glued together and then took over to my Avid CNC to cut out the basic core of the body. Sometimes I just sort of lay out the holes on the CNC router than drill them by hand because it's a little bit faster than changing all those tools and running that stuff on the router. Here you can see I'm putting recessed ferrules to hold the neck in place in the back, and what I did is simply cut the hole for the outer size of the ferrule, and then I put the ferrule in to make sure I was drilling perfectly in the center. So besides the removable blades, the other big idea I had that really unlocked this design was to make the whole body sort of black and just hide behind this blade, and then what we want to do is have this metal pop so it looks like it's a solid metal blade on almost an invisible instrument. That meant doing some inlays and whatnot. So here I'm cutting out my neck from poplar, but you'll see I recessed the headstock a little bit to do some inlays. We'll talk more about that later. Now I'm going to go over to my Thunder Laser and cut out the top and back of my sort of semi-hollow, semi-acoustic body. I had to create access to the electronics on the inside, so I just used my laser to cut these thin rings of wood that I stacked up to give me something to screw into, and that all just fits right in the back. That way I can put a flush cover on the back. Now let's talk about those blades. Like I mentioned, one of their concerns they had was traveling with something that looked like a weapon. Through getting through TSA, and so we wanted to make sure that we had versions that were designed for that. So besides getting real metal blades cut from Sen-Cut Sen, we'll talk more about that later, I came up with the idea. I have these old Duratec signs. There was a sign shop gave them to me. They were misprints, and what this stuff is called Alumaboard. It's very thin layers of aluminum on top of plastic on two sides, and a lot of sign makers use it. So I was able to sand off all the paint on there and create just this very thin sheet of aluminum that looks like metal out of plastic, and then cut the shapes up. This is also a great way for me to test out the shapes before getting them cut over at Sen-Cut Sen. And so there you can see this is my first run of trying to cut some of these out, and we'll see if it looks good enough to be metal. So, from the screen, on a television set, maybe you could get away with using these, but if you were doing something where you could use the actual metal blades, that would obviously be preferred. And these are nice and lightweight too. But of course, reality, or being as close to real as possible, was a big part of the design and the plan, and so that's where Cut Send comes in. And I got a bunch of parts cut for my inlays that we started talking about, as well as these blades, and some different shaped blades, cut from a couple different metals, the stainless steel and aluminum. Stainless steel is really heavy, but will be really good for photo ops, whereas the aluminum might make more sense for actually playing and performing. And of course, we're not going to sharpen these blades to make them actually sharp, but they look sharp, and you know, they are still a little bit dangerous, but not too dangerous to play, and they totally do the work from the stage. So then, like I mentioned, I wanted to have that aluminum metal look, you know, carry out through the instrument. So here I am inlaying a headstock piece, and then we also did some inlays that are loosely placed to where position markers might be on a guitar for some visual reference of this instrument. Typically the Zhongruan has frets, but Nini wanted a fretless one, so that made it a little bit easier, you know, for achieving the look, but you know, also a little bit harder to play. We decided to go with rich light for the fingerboard because it's just nice and even black, and obviously very durable. And then I, of course, inlaid these aluminum pieces in with some Total Boat epoxy. And I also want to give a shout out to Cut Send again. I use them all the time for a lot of my products and builds, and in this particular case, Cut Send was so excited about the project that they donated these parts to us. So thank you very much, Cut Send. And if you aren't familiar with them, you should go check them out. It's just a great, inexpensive way to get your ideas fabricated from metal very, very quickly and inexpensively. Like I said, I use them all the time for idea designs, one-offs, and also products that I develop and sell, like some of my square tools. Don't forget, you can't use wood glue with rich light, so I use some Total Boat 4-minute epoxy to adhere that to the wooden neck. These clamps are used for like guitar making and violin making, and I can use my drill to roughly adjust them to the size I need. And I started on the body here. Now that I had it all sanded, I glued the back on first and just using wood glue again. Now with the back on, we can start worrying about the look of this, and like I mentioned earlier, the idea was to have the body sort of be a blackout, and the best way to do that is to use this Stuart Semple Black 3.0 paint. They actually have a 4.0 now, but what this stuff is it's a flat black paint that just basically gets as black can be and doesn't reflect light. I also wanted to make sure the bridge was grounded while I was in there. And so I started by putting it on the inside, and we're going to paint the whole body with this stuff. And the good side of it is, like I said, it really makes the instrument disappear, and it's easy to touch up. But the bad side of it is that because it's flat, it doesn't have a lot of protection, so it does mark and scratch easier. But like I said, since you can touch it up so easily, it's not as big of a deal. But you can see already on the camera here, like those holes look like they go through to like the 7th ring of hell or something. It just really disappears. And now we wanted to get the body to have that whole look too. So I primed it to get it as smooth as I could. And I'm not the best painter in the world, and we're using this flat black paint that doesn't, like I said, adhere as well or protect as well, but we still, do the best we can. And here you can watch as this paint dries, the gloss goes away and the reflection goes away, and it just becomes flatter and flatter. It's really neat. I gave the neck the same treatment, but I did actually put a little finish on the back of the neck and wax it, because that's the part that, your hand is going to want to slide around on, and the flat black is not really conducive to that. I also wound a custom pickup that was specifically designed to the pole spacing using these big oversized slugs for each post that I had kind of sticking out. It was an idea that I thought would look really cool. But we ended up not using that. Nini ended up swapping it out. We'll talk more about that at the end for another pickup that honestly I think looks better. I should point out too that traditionally these instruments had strings that were made from silk, but nowadays they are using mostly metal composite strings that are very similar to guitar strings or bass strings in their construction and whatnot. So all this guitar and bass hardware was going to work fine for the strings as well as the electromagnetic pickups. You probably saw in that last montage I put some threaded inserts into the body that will be what some bolts will hold these blades on with, and I wanted to just recess the bolt head a little bit to make it look as flat and natural as possible. It was very exciting to actually bolt these on with it painted black and really see for the first time the full vision come to fruition. A little fine tuning, and this instrument was ready to make some music. So here's where the story takes a little bit of a twist, but it's okay. It all turns out okay in the end. I made the instrument, I put it together, I felt like it was playing pretty good, sounded pretty good, put it in a box, shipped it. By the time I got there, it wasn't good. So I don't know what happened, but the electronics got kind of banged up or something, and I guess the volume knob was like spinning, there was all this noise and stuff. And Nini and crew were under a time crunch to get to their filming of America's Got Talent, but fortunately for all of us, they have a great luthier right near them that was able to kind of rush job, get the instrument in, get it all back up in working order, and get out to the show. And in the process, the pickup that I had built wasn't doing quite what they wanted, so they have a relationship with Lace pickups, which are great pickups, and Lace put a custom pickup in for them, which honestly I think looks better than the one that I made. The one I made was very weird looking with those big posts that kind of stuck out, and I thought that'd be kind of cool, but just that plain kind of chrome top really looks good, and it sounds great. Well, have a listen. That's a pretty cool one. Thanks so much, Sen for helping out with this project, and thank you very much for watching. Make sure you go check out some of Nini's stuff. It's incredible. And also go check out some of these other instruments that I made in the past, of these other traditional Chinese instruments that I've sort of upended. Some of them are pretty cool, and there's some really cool musicians playing them out there in the world. So see you out there. Be good.